Greetings, duelists, and welcome to another video. Uh, Welcome back to the Underground. This is episode 12. Before we get on the topic of today's video, I want to thank each and every one of you who have been very patient with me, has made subscribe to the Underground video. I know that I have had a lot of audio hiccups in the past couple of days, past month. I really do apologize for that. I'm not an expert to like fixing my setup. We're trying to make it work. But yeah, without further ado, let's begin. So today's topic is the post alliance insight experience in the TCG. So uh, we got good news and bad news. The good news is Alice is now the best deck. I made it there. Not only the deck that everybody has been fearing and as of the moment. The bad news is due to that looming fear that everybody has behind this archetype, uh, there's a lot of hate, like very centered for it. And you can see it here by the results of YCS Providence. Like in the top 8, we had literally half the board being Alice, but only one of them made top 4. And not only did only one made it to top 4, uh, they lost in top 4, which ended up being with the victory of Mitsurugi Rising. So there are two takeaways from this. One, Mitsurugi is a very, very scary deck. Like, uh, I didn't make a dedicated video or episode talking about it. I kind of wanted to do one, but one PSA that I would have given to Dallas players is be very, very careful when it comes to Mitsurugi because that is not a good matchup. Not only that, the deck has slightly think it's not as strong of a ceiling as we do. And you can see it here by the YCS. There are other national events, other big events where that has also been proven. But yeah, right now, Mitsurugi is the talk of the town alongside Malice. Those are the two better decks on the tournament are aiming to beat for. Now, there are a lot of topics that we need to go over besides just talking about how strong Malice's position is. And the first one I want to talk about is cards that have been cycling out of a lot of people's extra decks. Some people are opting not to play SP Little Knight, Haggard Lizardos, or Nightmare Cerberus anymore. And the reason for that is because they are not Cybers monsters. Uh, Being Cybers is a very important deal because of backup administer and wizard administer. A lot of Malice players are pretty much centralizing their deck to be very Cybers focused and not combo focused with a lot of miscellaneous extenders like we did last format where we were playing like 6 to 8 pieces. If you look at these lists, 1, 2, 3, they all have one thing in common. They're only playing 2 Mystials now instead of 6 or 8. Obviously, Dressworm is really big factor. Well, the bigger factor, these are not hybrid. Not only that, these are situational advantages, which to no surprise, like that. But the biggest takeaway here is the role that the skills fulfill for the set have been eclipsed by Malice P. Marsham. If you've been staying tuned to all of my videos, underground episodes, I brought up how Malice P. Marsham pretty much is was going to cycle out the Mystios from the Malice deck just because it is a Cybers, it is a Malice name, more important, and it is tutorable by a lot of uh, uh, this card is not. Everybody keeps comparing Malice Demon Chair to a Mistio. This card is reminiscent to uh, Tearlament's Kashtira. Uh, why do I bring that up? Because this can banish from your hand, and this can banish spell and traps. That's something the Mystios cannot do. Uh, so yeah, that's very important. Up. But yeah, Cyber's Wicked and Sumo. Almirage is pretty much. You saw my last episode. I brought up how Almirage should be a staple in your deck if they're like a lot of these hand traps. Like for example, all the more charmies. I think only one of these lists that become cut. Yeah. Like Lucas Sacco. I think it was Lucas Sacco. Yeah. Lucas Sacco, good YouTuber by the way. Did not play Almirage in his extra deck. However, they're only playing 3 full hours. So that is like a justifiable. One thing that Lucas Sacco did that I really enjoyed, and I think I haven't seen other Mouse players do this, is playing Pit Knight early. Uh, Pit Knight early is very important because it is a generic Cybers monster that can be summoned with non-Cybers monster. And this card is also an out to Chaos Hunter. Chaos Hunter is in a lot of people's sights right now. I think the last couple of months we saw like over a 40% play rate. So just having a Cybers out to that card is very important. Especially since a lot of people are cutting Nightmare Cerberus from their extra. The next topic I want to talk about is the 3 Malice trap. If you remember a couple of episodes back, I talked about how a lot of people were cutting TB11 from their deck. Now we're seeing a lot of different approaches to the argument. We've been seeing people cutting 11. We've been seeing people cutting 6. We've been seeing people cutting out 11 and 6. We've been seeing people that are just playing 11 plus 7. Like, there's a lot of different combinations of the ratio of this card. Let's see if I can find it. I think, like, this is Aditya's list from top 4. They're only playing 6 and 7. Let's see. Okay, yeah, Gabriel. If you remember Gabriel, we talked about him on episode 4. Which, fun fact, he made top 8. Same way he did at the episode we talked about, which I think was YCS. One of these days, he'll break that top 8 bubble. But going back to the topic, Gabriel was only playing 07. And I think he cited out. He cited 06. Yeah, there it is. 06 is in the side deck. So this has been a very heavy debate with a lot of people. The one thing I want to bring up is if you do this approach, you have to be very careful when you're managing resources because some combination of cards are just leave you more vulnerable to certain cards than others. This is an example of me just playing for 7. And you'll see when we make the board what does this mean for us. Okay, so let's stop here. I think since we're at the topic, we can talk about Topologic Bomber Dragon. This was in both Aditya and on like Gabriel's list. If I'm not mistaken, the innovator of this was Pack. The takeaway from Bomber Dragon is another import piece. You can pick up import, and there are a lot of different combinations that you can do with this card. I will showcase that in a bit. But you have to be very wary when it comes to this odd and board combinations. Now, let's say we end on just the O7, right? Well, ignoring this Ghost Bell that is in our hand, uh, we're just going to ignore this Ghost Bell. We're going to put it face down. Now, let's say our opponent has Magnum or Magnum Search in the end. Something that the opponent that's playing Bestial Monsters can do is they can banish the Ramson, they can banish the Cryptor, and since we're ending on top of the Bomber Dragon, we can use the Tourist Worm to get rid of the Bomber Dragon. And all of a sudden, you lost access to Ramson and Hearts of Crypt. And your only line of defense is Marsh Hare or Binder with the O7. That doesn't sound that strong anymore. The thing that makes Malice very good as a deck is the amount of resiliency that you have with the other people. If you start losing a couple of them, and you just have to getting them back, you are susceptible to just losing the grind game. And this is a very grindy format, especially with full charms everywhere. The other takeaway from playing with just playing full 7 is that Malice in the Mirror becomes required in part of the call. Like, I really like Malice in the Mirror if you're playing. In Gabriel's defense, it has probably more than I have. So I'll give them benefit of this testing. But I'm just not a fan of just playing if you're not playing for the So yeah, that's pretty much it. Like, the takeaway. Now, going back, like playing an auto combination trap leaves you susceptible to another thing I have to mention. The less Malice trap cards that you play in your deck, the more your opponent will disrespect your play when you're trying to go for optimal line. Let's say, for example, you're setting a bluff and they know that you're only on 7. What's stopping your Malice opponent from just doing an Impermanent Nerva? Or just doing Ash Blossom on Red Ramson? Or just doing an Impulse to the Malice Extender that is getting back from Panic? Like, all of a sudden, you have no other lines of defense because you kept cutting these Malice trap cards. So that's one very important takeaway from this. Another takeaway is Ghost Bell and Haunted Mansion is very, very popular right now. This card is being in a lot of decks. And I don't know, just playing 07 and not playing and relying on March here is just not good. Well, it's not good enough to beat your opponent. Right. So let's now talk about the new Malice and board. So going back to the topic of topologic Bomber Dragon, one M board that was made that I particularly like, and you see the markers. The markers, counter numbers represent like each combination. Combination number 1, which is one that I saw from the Switzerland Nationals, which, fun fact, is Malice first ever win at a major event. And this person ended up completely undefeated with 13 victories and 0 losses. One M board that they particularly did was Wicked with Bomber Dragon, specifically playing PBE event. And what's really cool about this combination both Wicked and Bomber Dragon are protected. So if you play against Mitsurugi, for example, you don't have to worry about the Amino popping both these monsters, which is very important. But you can use 11, it becomes a Bomber interruption. If you have Harsh Hair, that becomes another Bomber interruption. Whatever you banish with Harsh Hair, that comes back is another Bomber interruption. If you have 6, that's like 4 interruptions out of Bomber Dragon, which is kind of strong, especially since all of these disruptions can be done under Chaos Hunter, which is very, very important to bring up because, again, Chaos Hunter is being played in a lot of decks. Uh, One that I particularly like, and not a lot of people are talking about, is Neo Tempest Terahertz. The reason I like Terahertz in combination of Kodo Soul is because you don't have to worry about X Ryziel, nor do you have to worry about like Ultimate Slayer and Cronus, because you can tutor the Save Worm to just negate those cards. Another really cool thing about Neo Tempest is that like going on the offensive, trying to go for premium against your opponent. Neo Tempest Terahertz is just very strong because it does negate for phase. So let's say for example you have base deals that you use like Terahertz and you use the base deals to just banish your back in during the battle phase. Your opponent has no real ways to do anything about it, and that's really good for us. Another typical M board is the IP 06 setup. Granted, having all Brave. This is like the more common one. This is weak to a lot of cards. However, if you do get Mo Charmid, this is like one safety line. From the opponent draws. There is a new one that involves Ramson and Mirror, which is another one you do if you get Mo Charmid. It does summon under 5 times, so you are safe from the blue as well. And then there's the new one, which is the O7, uh, which is I really like this one. Like it does have a level of agency, but again, we go back to pull spell. You have to be very careful about this when you're doing that combo. But, that's it when it comes to we already covered up important. Something very important that I've seen. A lot of people are playing Phantasme now. If you've been in this channel for a while, you know that in my past deck reports, I have played Phantasme. I think this card is really, really strong. Just as good as Meows is now being seen a lot of places, so you have to be very, very, very careful. If you remember the OCG trend where a lot of Dallas players were mainly Drow and Lockbird, I think we're going to go back to this approach with Valor. Not only does this freeze your opponent from drawing with more Charmies, it's really strong against Tsurugi matchup. One thing to take away is be careful when you activate Droll, because Droll can shut down O7. So that's something to keep in mind when you play this combo, where you try to Droll as part of the tempo. Yeah, I guess another topic is I Meet You. We've already talked about I Meet You in episode 1, so feel free to check it out if you haven't. We talked about how the Attic Mystic card would be a very good side deck for Dallas. And that's still the case. Yeah. The last thing I want to talk about a few interesting cards that you should consider for siding when it comes to Malice deck. I kind of want to talk about this one because I haven't seen other Malice players bring this up, and I think it's very important to just keep in mind meta trends and help out each other, Malice players, because Malice is getting a lot of hate, and in order to keep up with the current format, we have to also like be as prepared for the other strategies, same way they are prepared for us. So the first card I want to talk about is Nightmare Corruptor Ibli. So for those who don't know, Nightmare Corruptor Ibli is a Cyber's monster. This card reads, when this card is normal summon, you can target one link monster in your graveyard, special summon it to your field, where as long as it points to the card, or changes attack to zero. And it is you cannot special summon monsters except monsters. If this card is in your owner's control, is set to the graveyard, you can special summon this card to your opponent's field in use their position. You can only use this effect of so this card is really cool because the way you utilize this card is you link it away and you summon it to your opponent's side of the field. And you're probably thinking, is there real ways to get to this card? Yes, there is. Backup adding Nister can add slash discard any Dark Cybers monster. Nightmare Corruptor Ibli is a Dark Cybers. So Nightmare Corruptor Ibli is really cool because let's look at Charlie Futch's Ryziel deck. If we look at the Ryziel deck from Charlie Futch, if you look at the main and the side deck, there are literal no outs to Nightmare Corruptor Ibli. Now, let's say, for example, we summon Ibli to our opponent's side of the field, and we end on Hearts of Cryptor. We can just banish the Cryptor itself with her own effect, not bring her back, and all of a sudden your opponent cannot get rid of this Ibli. They cannot get rid of her by battle. They cannot get rid of her by linking away. Because again, if you see Charlie's list, the only link monster is Dynamondo, and this requires a ritual monster, which means they literally have no outs to Ibli, and they're just going to eventually just lose the game because uh, they they're stuck, and we get advantage out of like the Ibli being hostage on their side of the field. The best part about this combo is it doesn't matter how many draws your opponent gets from most armies. It doesn't matter what other non-engine they have. They cannot get rid of the Ibli. So you pretty much put them on a hostage situation until you feel comfortable beating apart their board and just clearing their board outright. The next card I want to talk about, um, now since we're on the topic of Hearts of Cryptor, it's Dragon's Mind. This is a card that came out in Alliance Insight, and Dragon's Mind essentially is like a counter trap that works for 2500 specific attack and defense. Hearts of Cryptor has 25. There are other candidates like Firewall Dragon and Magnamut. Uh, I think this card is very underrated. I think if you are a Malice player, you should really consider this card. Um, because the end boards that we make with Malice are not unbreakable. They do have an issue like against particular breakers, and Dragon's Mind just really helps with that. The really cool thing about Dragon's Mind as well is that after you use this effect, you can reset it and start gaining advantage in the grind game by just reusing Dragon's Mind. Keep in mind that you do have to pay 2500 life points for it, and this deck does pay a lot of life to begin with. So if you're, for example, not playing O6 in the like you cannot afford to just play Dragon's Mind without O6 because you will get very down on life points. I guess Druid Sword is another example for Dragon's mind. So the next card we're gonna talk about is Dimensional Fissure. Uh, this card has already been seen play in the OCG. This card I think is really good because a lot of decks that are winning right now or topping events, besides like Malice and Mitsurugi, are decks that actually do get hurt by Dimensional Fissure. Uh, Against the Mitsurugi Raizio deck in particular, this card is fine because it shuts down X Raizio from being summoned. Uh, it makes the ritual summons for your opponent very awkward as well. Uh, if they're playing the Fiendsmith version, uh, like this shuts down the entire Fiendsmith engine, which is very popular right now. And so overall, this is just another card that you should be like keeping an eye for. Same thing goes for Dimension Shifter. Like a lot of Malice players are just not playing Dimension Shifter anymore, which is very strange to see because in the OCG, a lot of people are playing Dimension Shifter. Although you can make the argument that the main reason Shifter has been played mainly in the OCG is because of the Justice Hunter decks. So maybe on August, when that set debuts, we might see Dimension Shifter being played more so than not. But yeah, uh, the next card we want to talk about, I went a little bit too fast there with my sticker arrest. We'll talk about Devastation Virus first. This is primarily for the Malice Mirror match. If you look at these three lists that all made top 8 in YCS Providence, the Devastation Virus hits every Cybers card except for Wizard. They also hit all the Mulch Armies. It also hits the Ash Blossoms. Like, the only way for your Malice opponent to come back from the virus is if they open the Bestials or the underground sarcophagus, like cards like those. So this card can become a blowout against the Malice Mirror match. Uh, Against the Mitsu Raizio deck, it does hit a lot of cards as well. Like it hits all the three. Well, it hits these two. They don't hit Kusanagi, but Kusanagi is like the weakest one. It hits X Raizio. It hits Sword Raizio. It hits all the Mochamis again. It hits the Drolls. Like, yeah. Uh, Keep an eye out for the Devastation Virus. Mystic Arrest. I don't think this one comes to anybody's surprise. Deck Lockdown is another one that you can talk about that works almost the same way. These two cards in particular are really strong against Mr. Rugi. Again, you have to respect that matchup. It's the most scariest matchup for us at the moment. This also doubles down on Raizio. This doubles down on Rogue decks as well. I like Mystic Unrest a little bit more than Deck Lockdown, just because this particularly is a lingering effect. However, you can make the argument for Lockdown because you can just activate it whenever you want. And worst case scenario, if you need to search cards, you can banish it. You can banish it with the Hearts of Cryptor or with O7. So that is one mention that we have to take away with this card. The last card I want to talk about and is a card that I highly don't recommend people play on Malice unless you know what you're doing, because it is a double-edged sword card. It is one of the popular techniques that was introduced in 2010 in the OCG when it came to Infernities. For those who remember that deck, and the card I'm talking about is, oh yeah, Dual Leopard also is an honorary mention to this. But the card I'm talking about is Shadow Imprisoning Mirror. For those who don't know, this card is basically skill drain and soul drain for dark monsters. The reason I'm bringing up this card is if you're the Malice player and you know what you're doing, and you're playing Hearts of Cryptor specifically, you can bypass the Shadow Imprisoning Mirror with Hearts of Cryptor. But more importantly, this card shuts down the all the Mitsurugis. So just finding very strong cards against the matchup is very very important, and this card is no exception. Again, I don't recommend you do this type of strategy unless you really are an expert. This strategy could easily be backfired if your opponent does non-engine trades against you. If you want to be safer, you can just opt for the mistaker arrest approach. Um, but if you want to be a little bit more ballsy against Mr. Rugi, you can also use this against the Malice Mirror match if you know what you're doing. Uh, Again, this is a strategy that was introduced in the OCG back in the day when Infinity was like the best deck, back when Launcher was a 3. Uh, what they ended up doing was they set up their end board with multiple Infinity barriers. In this case, Dragon's Mind is a very perfect example. And against the Infinity Mirror match, they just did Shadow Imprisoning Mirror, and that card was just obscenely brutal against the deck. All right, uh, that's it from me. I hope you found this video to your liking and understanding. I hope you found this very informative. There are a lot of other things I want to cover when it comes to Malice on future Underground episode. But for now, I'll leave it at this juncture. Uh, Keep practicing and keep doing.